everyone, and welcome to another of our annual Best of 2024 podcasts. And this time around, it's the best music. And I'm joined once again by Fiona Liddell with our pick of 10 tracks each to talk about something which never gets any easier. Fiona, I don't know if you agree with that.
It definitely doesn't. I'm always happy to agree to come on, and then it's about 2 or 3 weeks of just stressing about what to pick. So it's nice to be here, but it wasn't nice getting here.
No, I totally agree. I mean, and I really had 11, and I just
Yeah,
went, how can I
I had
kill
20.
my baby? Well, I had much more than 11, but I got it down to 11. But so
Oh,
this one, that one, this one. Eventually, I just sent it and went, oh, what,
very tough.
who cares?
You're much more on the pulse than me as well, I think now, because yeah, you do your weekly show and everything, whereas I kind of dip in and out. So I was catching up on a lot that I'd missed basically this year as well, and realizing how did I miss that and that, and yeah,
Yeah.
so many other things that suddenly became like in the top 10 in the last 2 weeks that I hadn't really heard properly before. So it was a lot to get through.
But what I love about doing this with you every year is that you always introduce me to someone I've either missed or overlooked along the way, and that's happened a couple of times this year as well.
Hooray, good. It's the same as well. There's a couple of artists on yours I didn't fully clock this year. Some I thought, yep, I'm glad you picked that because that was close on my list as well. But some I just hadn't really heard of or missed entirely. So that's good as well.
So how we're going to do it is that we'll go through one each till we get to the very end. That's as easy as
That's
that.
it.
So let's talk
Takes as
about
long as
your
it takes.
first. Let's talk about your first choice.
Yep, my very first choice is from a band called Race Car. I reckon they're mainly based in Edinburgh. It's called Fall Leave. Now, they've released just a plethora of amazing singles this year leading up to their next album, which is called Pink Car, and it's coming out on March 7th. But Fall Leave, for me, like I loved all the singles. But this one or Lay Me Down, I think were my two that I was going to pick for Race Car. But Fall Leave, there's something. It's very like sonic journey. It doesn't really sit still or stay in one place. It changes, the structure just keeps moving and changing. It's not very conventional at all in structure, and just musically, it's just incredibly interesting. And yeah, it's also a bop, which helps. So it's like complex but boppy at the same time.
So this was one that I would have picked if you hadn't picked it.
Hey, good.
And I had it in my head that we picked, or we talked about Race Car last year, but I went and looked, it was actually
We didn't.
2022.
Yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
a
was as
while
long
back. Yeah,
ago
no.
as that. So it shows you how long they've been
Mm-hmm.
making
I
brilliant
tried
music.
to avoid picking the same people again, but they've just had such a stellar. It's kind of hard
Uh,
to not pick them again.
I know, absolutely right. I think they've pretty much become my favorite band.
Hey.
I played them on the radio just recently, and I was thinking, every now and again, a band comes along that reminds me of kind of being a fanboy. Even in the 50s, it reminds me of being a fanboy and that kind of thing. And they've got to that stage with me now.
Yeah.
It's so musically interesting, as you've
Mm-hmm.
kind of mentioned. It's just something different in every track. I mean,
Yeah.
but it always sounds like them. But partly that's the vocals, partly that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're
Production as well. Yeah.
yeah, an amazing production going on
Mm-hmm.
with them. And then I love there's a little bit of mystery about them. We start to know more, but you've
Yeah,
got
it's revealing bit by bit. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. In fact, I've got my copy of their first album, Orange Car, which came on
Oh
a
wow! Oh, the wee
very
yeah USB thing. I remember that. Yeah, that was
USB
2022,
stick,
wasn't
which
it?
is one of
Aye.
my favorite things. But yeah, I'm so pleased that you picked this because I'm a huge fan of Race Car, and I think this is their best single of the year.
Yeah,
Amongst,
they're all really good,
yeah,
but yeah, this is probably the best
absolutely.
one in my opinion. And have you seen them live yet?
I haven't, and I was supposed to, and I couldn't go.
Yeah. So Gefahrgeist supported them in July at the Caves, along with Biasha and Saria, I think as well. They were yeah,
Wow.
it was about four acts. And watching them live, it was just yeah, they've managed to, even though the single is so like sonically complicated, I guess, but they were able to bring like a completely like different but similar but sounding. So it's like a live energy, which is very different, but they managed to capture the complexity of that single. I think when they played it live, I heard it was definitely "Lay Me Down." I remember singing along to that one when we saw them.
That's a cracking lineup. That must have
Yeah,
been
it was
a
good.
great night. Yeah,
That's back in July.
yeah.
Our only gig of the year, actually. We didn't do any
Was
other
it?
gigs. We mainly focused on the album, which is still, as always, moving at a glacial pace.
Sometimes that's no bad thing. And we'll maybe
Yeah,
mention that with what a couple, certainly one of my choices, who is taking their time with their album, but
they
it's
are.
well worth the wait. So I said Race Car are perhaps the most musically interesting. But then we're going to talk about Shum Shum and
Yep.
Strobes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a track that stayed with me the whole year. I first heard
Wow.
it, I was sent it and just went, oh my God, what is this? It was so immediate. You know, you had that amazing French spoken word intro, and then
Yeah.
the
The riff
screaming
comes in.
guitar, which is
Mm-hmm.
just, a sensational. Shum Shum is a musician called Andrew McDowell, and he got in touch and said, oh, I think you might quite like this. And yeah, I've been blown away by it. And it's
Yeah.
stuck with me. It's one of those tracks that stuck with me throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
It's from an album, Origami Future, which has got some amazing musicians on it.
Yeah.
Incredible. For me, this is the standout track for
Mm-hmm.
Shunsun for this year. What did you
I,
think?
I loved it. I think it reminded me a lot of like there's a lot of like a lot of my friends enjoy quite a bit of anime, and it reminded me of the start of any of them. Basically, it's very much like an anime intro song. Just the sort of fighting guitar and like the drums are especially are incredible in it. The drums were by Edwin McLaughlin. I managed to find his name, and he was fantastic on that track. I realized I didn't know it was Andrew McDowell because I think he released Fizz with Lissa Robertson doing the vocals on it under a different name a few years back.
Right.
But it's now been re-released under Zoom Zoom. I did not know it was the same person. I was delighted to find out it was the same person. So that's nice as well. I need to check out the whole album, I think, because the Strobes one and I think Fizz, Fizz I remember loving when I first heard it. I can't remember the name that it was that they were releasing under at that point,
Right.
but yeah, Andrew's a lovely guy. He seems to work with a lot of different vocalists from Glasgow and Edinburgh. So if he wants to collab, I'm very open to that. Just gonna advertise
And
it
you
here.
mentioned Edwin McLaughlin on
Yes.
drums, who is just one
Uh-huh.
of my favorite musicians. He's been in
Yeah.
a lot of bands that I've loved over the years. Now drumming with Day Sleeper and
Mm-hmm.
various other bit Capel Seshassi as well.
Yeah.
He's a phenomenal
It's the vibe. No, he's
musician.
fantastic on this. Yeah. No, it's definitely. It feels very anime, very like hyper pop. Just extremely catchy as well. And the singer as well, who's Lucy Munier. I think I'm probably saying that wrong, but yeah, she's a French singer songwriter based in Glasgow. Her voice weirdly reminded me of Church's, even though clearly, obviously, she's French. It's a very different accent, but just in terms of tonality, I thought it sounded very similar to that, which I was up for.
I really love that kind of juxtaposition between her vocals
Mm-hmm.
and the screaming guitar, screeching guitar. And I would love to see it. They did have a live launch again. Unfortunately, I missed
Oh,
it.
okay.
And I would love to have seen that because I've got
That's very
visions of
cool.
kind of almost the stage divided and
Yeah.
these two different things going
Epileptic
on.
enduring strobes on one side and just like a nice spotlight on the other
Yeah,
side.
exactly,
That'd be
exactly.
something to see.
So what's your second choice?
My second choice is All That I Carry by a fairly new band called Bee Eater. So this is kind of my tradition that I've added into this podcast. Every year I pick one song by somebody I know pretty personally quite well, and I think their song deserves a bit of a bump. So I like to plug them on here because your listeners are obviously much more engaged in like finding new artists rather than like just going through a Spotify algorithm and forgetting whoever it was you listened to. I think this is a good platform for them. Beater are a sort of folk, contemporary sort of collective of people. They're based in Glasgow. The singer songwriter for this song is Fraser McMillan.
Right?
And this one comes from their debut EP, Head Like the Boiling Sea, which is when I asked Fraser about it, he said it'd be out around spring next year, so that could mean literally anything. I heard this and I was just stunned by the quality. For a first single, I thought it was just amazing production quality. They recorded it in a studio in Leith called Knockwood, and it was the very first recording done in the space at all. They hadn't done
All
anything
right.
else. So I was shocked at just how beautiful and just how clear it all was. And yeah, there was no interference or anything. It was just a really gorgeously recorded single. I'm excited to hear the rest of the EP as well. I'm curious to hear what you think about it though.
Well, I did pass me by completely, and it's the longest track on the list by a
Sorry.
couple of minutes. No, no, that's fine. No, I love that. In fact, I've already put it on the playlist for the record for the radio show because
Oh,
I've got
great.
every week I do a track which is Ali's Comfort Break, which is always a longer track that you
I
will put in
remember I
the
think you
show.
played Orbit, the one of the ones by Gefahrgeist in that
That's
last
right.
break. And I was like, oh, finally
So
someone plays it on the radio.
that's it. Well,
8
there's
minutes.
lots, but there are lots of tracks that that's the case, and this is one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to letting the radio listeners hear it. But it
Mm-hmm.
is really epic.
Yeah.
with a kind of care for the listener because it builds and builds and builds, and then it kind of lets you down quite gently again at the end. You
Yeah.
know, music like goes to this thing. I can't
There's a
wait to
lilt
hear
to
the
it.
EP. I think
Hmm.
that's really interesting. Have they played live at all? Is there
They
other stuff
have, yeah.
behind
We
them?
saw their first proper gig, as Fraser put it, was in at the old hairdressers. I think about maybe a
Oh
month ago or
wow,
so.
yeah.
And that was that's had support by Annie Booth, I think, which was also incredible to see live. Love seeing Annie live again. And just for a first proper gig, I was just stunned by just how tight they were. First of all, for like the first proper gig, it was all pretty seamless, and just the plethora of material they had. Like it was just supposed to be a single launch, but they played for about an hour and a half.
Wow.
It was incredible. It was an incredible hour and a half of music. Yeah, and just this single is particularly. It just kind of transports you into this mountains and trees and like hill walking. It definitely just takes you right there. And yeah, I'm excited to hear the rest of the EP as well. I've not heard it, even though I know Fraser. I've not heard it yet.
It reminded me in terms of feel rather than sound to
Mm,
kind of Big Country when they were doing that kind of what they called the big music, and it's,
yeah.
you know, kind of talking, you know, singing about landscapes and winter and
Mm.
all that kind of things. You can imagine if people still made expensive videos, there would be one in the
Oh,
middle of nowhere with them, you know, pretending to play their instruments.
that'd be bad. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I think this was great. And I mean, the old hairdressers is quite a small room for a band making that kind of
Oh
noise.
yeah, there was so many of them. It's ridiculous. Apparently, it's like only like four main people, but they just added in all these guest musicians. Like Annie sang with them as well. Lisa Robertson was doing fiddle and singing with them as well. Just a bunch of people just jumped in and started playing with them. So it was, yeah, quite a tight room in the end, but it sounded fantastic, even though it was tiny.
There's lots of kind of really interesting collaborations to talk about later on.
Mm-hmm.
This next one, I'm pretty sure, is just one man's vision. And it's Messy Eater, and I'm in a mess right now. And this, along with your next one, is the most recent releases. They're both just released in the
Oh right,
last
okay.
few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And this ticks a lot of my boxes. I think you can't ignore that there's a Beck influence going on there,
Yeah.
you know, all that kind of stuff. But also the Aussie band Avalanches. So, you know, they use different samples and different loops and everything like that. I would I'm interested to know what you think, because I would love to know how it was recorded, because there's so much going
I
on.
know there's so much going on. It reminded me a lot of because of all the samples and the sort of the instruments coming in that are related to or most commonly associated with different genres, just coming in on this, very clear like just absolute blend of everything, which shouldn't work, but it does. It reminded me of an artist called Grizz who also does a similar thing with like slide guitars and banjos, but then puts like just synths and beats all over it and just messes it up basically. It reminded me of that, and yeah, the energy I thought was fantastic as well. It just felt very just like sort of catchy and also kind of ragey at the same time. It reminded me of Dandy Warhol. Some reason came to mind. I don't know why, but yeah, Beck as well is definitely a clear influence as well.
Yeah.
And apparently there was self-help guide vocals sampled throughout it to sort of help with the whole existential crisis of it all. So
Well,
I thought it was an interesting mesh of everything that by a less talented person might not work as well, but in this it just seamlessly blends together and
I
creates
mean,
this
interesting, you know,
genius.
it's called Messy Eater. In other
Yeah,
hands, this could have been a right mess. I mean, it
yeah,
really could have
that's
been.
what I mean. Yeah.
Pete, who is Messi, he used to make music as Artley, who I had played on the
Mm-hmm.
show a bit, which was, if I remember rightly, there was a bit more kind of acoustic going on. But I didn't
All
know
right.
he was an illustrator as well as a musician. And that
Oh,
kind of
all
makes
right.
sense, because I feel that there could be some kind of cartoon video to
Yeah.
back this kind of thing in a guerrilla style, you know, as
Mm-hmm.
well. I say, I think it was only just released last couple of weeks, and immediately I found it incredibly catchy and
It is really catchy. Yeah, it's one
feeling.
of the catchiest
Yeah,
choruses we have, I think, in the whole list. I think this one is definitely up
yeah,
there.
absolutely. So what's your next one?
My next one is Kintsugi by Little Acres, which is the passion project of Glasgow vocalists Rachel Lightbody, Karis Crosby, and Emily Boyd. I sort of know Karis a little bit through the grapevine,
Mm-hmm.
and I know they're working on this debut EP, which is coming out on the 29th of January. I think it's coming out. They've got a launch show on the 29th of January at
They're
Glasgow,
part of
I think.
Celtic Connections. They're doing a launch
Yes,
show. Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, yeah. So this is their second single from that. I heard their first one. I loved it as well, but this one I think it's just the sort of swagger it has that I really dug, and I'm a sucker for harmonies. I think if anyone's listened to this particular annual show before, most of my picks have harmonies on them, and just the effortlessness of them just singing together, because it's clearly been doing this for a very very long time. They're just very blended, and just very feels very kind of symbiotic almost, the three voices coming together, and it just, I mean, even though it's effortless, it is complicated. If you laid it all out, you'd be like, well, how does that work? Exactly.
I was
um
Sorry, I was going
Sorry.
to ask you, as you know, as the musician out the two of us, these harmonies are really special, aren't they? I mean,
They really are.
they just blow me away when I listen to them, and you think, oh yeah, this is, as you say, it seems effortless. Of
Yeah.
course, I've seen them either one, two, or three of them at the time,
Uh-huh.
backing people like Tom McGuire and the Brassos and Rachel Sermani and Fat
Yep.
Suit and various other bands. They have been working in music, each
For
of
a
them,
very
for a
long
long,
time.
long time doing it.
Hmm.
And I think that kind of really shines on this track.
It does. It gives them a chance to basically stand in the spotlight. They're great as backing singers, obviously, as well, and session musicians.
Yeah,
They're next to none. But it's really exciting to hear that they've got an actual EP of just the three of them doing what they do best, basically.
yeah.
And I'm very excited to hear more of it. But this one in particular, out of the two, this one stood out to me the most.
And it's good.
Um,
I'm going to talk in my next choice about soul music, but
yeah,
this is soulful in an incredible way, and
it is.
it feels it could have been recorded any time between the late '60s and now. You know, it's got
Yeah,
that
it's
kind
really
of
timeless.
appeal
Yeah.
to it.
It seems very influenced by kind of soul music and kind of Motown, I guess, as well. I was thinking,
Hmm.
maybe it's just because it's three voices, but I was thinking of, Diana Ross, that sort of ilk there, and just the Supreme sort of vibe. But yeah, it's also quite. Um, it's a subject that wouldn't really be spoken about, I don't think, back then. The kintsugi thing of like, you repairing what's been broken with gold. It's a bit more worldly, I guess, than that. But yeah, it definitely reminded me musically of that sort of time of the 60s.
Yeah, I only know what that means because I used to subtitle antique programs, and I heard them talking about how they fixed these things, and that was the
Wow.
Japanese way of fixing it. So I was like, oh, I know what that means. It's and again the guitar. I don't know who plays guitar on it, but it's
Mm,
just majestic. I mean, it's
it is, yeah.
amazing. That real Motown, choppy guitar that's
Mm.
on as well. No, I think I'm going to that launch. I'm hoping that I'll
Okay,
be able to
great.
get there, and I
I
can't
think
wait
I'm
because
going to, because yeah, January's a bit quieter, so
yeah.
hopefully should be
Oh, it'll
fine.
be
So I'll
good to
see
see
you there.
you. Absolutely, absolutely. I definitely owe you a drink for doing this over the years.
Absolutely not. It's my pleasure.
And so next, talking of soul music, you
Hmm.
can't say anything else but Brooke Coombe, Shaken by the Wind, and perhaps among the finest exponents for me in Scotland of doing this kind of old school R&B soul music. I used the word timeless, and I think that's what you're getting here as well. Listening to it as well, there's for me, there's almost a bit of world weariness about the vocal. It sounds a bit, there's a wisdom to it that maybe you wouldn't
Yeah.
expect,
Do you
like,
know she's only 24?
I know, I know.
What?
It reminded
This is
me back in
definitely
the,
not that old.
I know, but do you know what I mean by that? There's a
Yeah.
quality. It reminded me there was a band in the 90s called Gomez who came
Hmm.
out and had quite a successful hit. And when they came out, there's a vocalist that sang with Gomez, and he sounded like Joe Cocker or Tom Waits. He had
Oh,
this voice.
wow.
And you saw him and he looked like one of the in-betweeners. It was a really weird thing to see. I mean, yeah, I think Book
A
Coombs.
voice wise beyond its years, I
Yes,
guess
exactly.
is the
I
only
think
way to
she's an
put it.
absolute superstar, and
Yeah.
it looks as though that's the way she's going as well.
It seems to
Um,
be, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, this song in particular was written with help from Tom McFarland of, do you know Jungle? A bit more sort of mainstream than the
right,
Scottish indie scene, but yeah,
right.
Jungle are an incredible band. And apparently it was just like a chance, like just going down to London and jamming with him in a room. But yeah, the Jungle influence is quite clear as well in terms of the chord choice and the arrangement of the strings and stuff. It feels very like that. But yeah, I just think it's a stunning meshing of those two worlds of soul, and then Jungle's a bit more sort of funk, I guess, in there
Yeah,
as well. Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to this one. As she self describes it as Motown meets Carole King, and I think that's quite appropriate.
absolutely. And so you've still
For
got that 60s feel that we were talking
Yep,
about, that 70s feel as well. And I guess that old soul feel too when
hmm
you're talking about those people. Yeah.
basically, we don't like the future. We want we want the old
Well,
days back.
there's
That's
plenty more of that to come, Fiona. Believe you me, you know who you're talking to.
But
So,
no, Bookcomb, I'm very excited for the album out on the 31st of January as
I
well.
know, absolutely. And our last album was really good too.
Hmm.
Worth checking out. Next for you.
Next for me is Move Higher by Josephine Sillars. This is from her new EP called The Loveliest Things Change, which is coming out on March 1st. This is one that I found pretty late in the game. I found it in the last 2 weeks as I was sort of just making sure that I'd hit every base and I'd covered everybody, and whoever had released new music that I'd missed, I went back and checked it. This in particular, I think I was just walking to the train station and it came on the playlist I'd made, and it just made me well up. I don't know why. It just moves me, and every time I've heard it since, it's just moved me. I think it's the most. I've heard a lot of Josephine music over the years, and I've loved a lot of it. But this, I think, is the most powerful I've heard her.
Yeah.
In terms of vocal performance, it's just yeah, this feels very vulnerable, but very controlled as well, and very intentional. The production is stunning as well. Just the sort of minimalist build, and just this very simple lyrics as well, just moving and changing with the production. It's stunning. But yeah, what did you think of this one?
Well, I've long been a fan of Josephine. We've played her, used to, before we had the radio show, we would kind of feature her on the website. But,
Mm,
and it's really interesting to see as it's developed,
yeah.
always had a real understanding of pop music,
Mm,
but always been an interesting lyricist as well. And sometimes I think that with pop songs that are deep, for want of a better word,
yeah.
you really have to tune in and listen to it to get the most out of it.
Mm,
But with this, the music and the lyrics really match up, and I think it makes it so powerful, as you suggest, and really moving. I think you get the full picture with this track. The music matches the lyrics in that sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I've written down here a really powerful song with Josephine really pushing herself and her music as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait for the EP because always been an interesting musician, but
Mm.
this suggests kind of
The
going
sort
to
of
another
next
level.
era or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's more a way of putting it. The next era
Yeah.
rather than another level, because it always made amazing music. I've
Mm-hmm.
got a story in the back of my mind that she was doing a track this year and managed to get a voice note from
Oh,
Michael Sheen. Is that
she
right?
did. Yeah, it was through TikTok, I think. Yeah, she managed to get a voice note. He was saying, I think it was the title of the track or something. It wasn't as Josephine Sills. It was as a sort of duo band, which
Yeah,
the name
that's right.
escapes me unfortunately now. But yeah, it was like a Michael Sheen sort of sample being used by it. I wonder if we can find it. Michael Sheen. What was it called again? But yeah, it's just a funny um sort of mix of the two, I think, of just the two different worlds of the Scottish indie music, which is very far removed from
Yeah,
the sort of stardom of Michael Sheen. But he was up for it due to the sort of equality that comes from TikTok and that sort of
yeah.
thing. We're all on the
And I
same
think
level there.
it's the kind of thing he would do. He seems like that.
Yeah, he's a funny guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It does seem like that. But yeah, it's a
Well,
good one.
my next choice is the Tenementals and the Owl of Minerva. And I know this is arguably the most Glasgow song ever. It's
Ever made, ever.
pretty much the most one ever made.
The name is also
But
fantastic. I have to just quickly add that's an incredible name. It's
that
it's hilarious.
it's a brilliant name. And it's that's not the only reason I picked it. I love the idea. It's kind of, for me, the Stooges fronted by James Kelman rather than Iggy Pop, that it's got that
Yeah.
kind of feel about it. And I spoke to David Archibald about it for the radio show and about the album, a Glasgow history. And I really love his kind of authentic delivery, which seems to
Mm,
be the perfect one to tell this story.
yeah.
And as the song goes on, it's quite a long song again, about over 5 minutes, but he manages to tell a kind of fuller story of Glasgow than you normally get. You normally get the kind of stereotypes, and they're there, they're still
Mm-hmm.
included, but there's other bits as well. I think, if you didn't know the city, you could listen to this song and make a good stab of making your way around it.
If nothing else, you get the sort of attitude of the place quite clearly. I think
Absolutely, yeah.
of it.
It's got that little bit. I love it. There's so many great lyrics in it to
There are. I've taken a
well,
note of a few of my favorite ones. Yeah, because it's just it's like a sort of spoken word punk. I guess is the thing. It reminds me of my days when I used to work in spoken word, and there'd be amazing poems written down or spoken. That's kind of what I think a good poem is. It's kind of has to be both, and this is looking at these lyrics written down, it just reads just like a massive love and hate letter to Glasgow at the same time.
it's again. I would love. I'd never thought about that, but it is a kind of stream of consciousness, isn't it?
Yeah,
That
a
kind
little
of comes
bit. Yeah.
out slightly structured in the having the the owl flying
Still the
northeast,
river
south, and
flows,
west.
yeah.
But actually, interesting enough, the album itself, Glasgow History, volume 1 of 6. That's ambitious.
6. Oh,
That's what he
is
says,
there enough?
volume 1 of 6. We'll see. We'll
I'll
see if
start
we get
soon.
that far. But it's not, doesn't all sound like that's the opening track. And I think it sets up the album really well because it's clearly about Glasgow. But there's different styles and different things going on throughout. You've got this really all encompassing track, and then you've got much more focused and individual stories that are told
Okay.
throughout it. It's
No, I
amazing
was curious
album.
to check out the rest of it. Yeah, I'm gonna check out the rest of the album now. I hadn't heard of this one; it completely missed me. But yeah, the song came on, and I am originally from Glasgow, supposedly. So yeah, it was nice to sort of think, I'd like name all these places and all these things. Like, oh yeah, I know where that is, I know where that is, I know where that is,
Yeah.
and just yeah, it was quite fun for me. It's just the idea of just this literal bird's eye view of the whole place and just encompassing everything that you can see and everything that's gone by as well, like the past, present, and the future of the place. It's
Yeah,
a
I really,
very big scope for a song to cover, but they manage it really well.
I love that idea of, you know, you're not understanding a place until the time has passed and you can look back on it. I think that's really,
Yeah.
really interesting.
No, it's fascinating. Yeah, I'll check out the rest of the album. But the lyrics are incredible. That's the main thing for me. And the delivery is also, yeah, it reminded me a little bit of you, weirdly, as if you got angry or something.
Yeah. I was
Just
after
start
a couple of
shouting.
pints, yeah,
Manders!
let me tell you this.
Yep.
I will tell you this. Yeah.
Back
I'm
in
not.
my day. I don't know. It
Yeah,
was great.
you might be spot on with that, Fiona. That's maybe why I identify with it so strongly.
Maybe. I like it too. It's great.
So
Very,
from
very
the
interesting
kind of
choice.
almost ridiculous, not ridiculous, to the sublime, though, your next choice, which is someone I didn't
Yes.
really know, or I think I'd known a little bit. I think I've heard the track before, but not enough. I'm
You
now going
have.
to check out further.
Again, this is me going back on my self-imposed rule of trying not to include the same artist, more than once in consecutive years. But this is Anna Cassidy's song "I Must Go," and I've
Uh-huh.
heard this, and I knew I recognized the voice, and I knew kind of where from as well, but it was a different name. The first name was the same, last name was different. So I chose it, and then I went and looked, and I was like, "Oh, it's Anna Layden. That's who I picked. Her song "I Don't Like You" I picked in 2021. I want to
Wow.
say, and
Yeah,
now,
do you know what? I thought that as well,
yeah,
and it was the voice.
yeah,
I
the
really think
voice.
Fiona's recommended this to me before.
I have.
I
I'm
thought, well, but
sorry.
that's great. No, no, not don't at all, because I would never have picked up Anna
Yeah.
Layden. I remember now that you mention it.
Yes.
But so there you go.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, this is Anna Cassidy now, an Irish singer-songwriter based in Glasgow. This was released back in October, I think. There's not been much. I've not managed to find much about whether this is going to be an EP or anything. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I Don't Like You was a very different feeling. So it had kind of a swing and again a kind of attitude to it. Whereas this feels much more vulnerable. It's very honest, and it's very much about letting go of a relationship that you know is not right. But also feels kind of hopeful, like the future will be better for both of you if you just split off. But yeah, the voice just that Anna has, just whenever I hear it, it just stirs something in me. It just cuts through to me. I don't know why, but yeah, her songwriting in particular, just it always manages to just yeah cut through me, and I just remember it so clearly. There's not one of those songs you just hear and whether or not it's for you, sometimes they just pass you by. Whenever Anna's songs come on, I just have to
Yeah,
just sit and listen to it, and I just kind of
absolutely.
pause everything in my life and have to listen to it. It was either this one or she has another song about dogs, which also made me almost cry because I think my dog had been away for a couple of days at my parents, so I was like, I miss my dog. But yeah, she's definitely one of my favorite songwriters in Scotland just now, and I hope there's more from Anna because
Yeah,
everything I've heard I've loved.
so do I. This again, it's beautifully produced,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot going on. Increasingly, you're hearing instrumentation. And, oh my God, they've thrown in that as well.
Yeah.
But Anna's always to the fore, and that voice is always to the fore. It's never overshadowed by anything else going on. And
Yes, center.
yeah, absolutely, and it's absolutely stunning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so pleased that not only have you picked Anna again, I've now
Yeah.
made that connection between the two and kind of
Yeah, no, I've sent you the list and then I clicked. I was like, no, I've already picked Anna before, but she deserves it. It's an incredible. Both of the songs are incredible, and I want to hear more.
It reminds me of so many of my favorite things, and as it turns out, herself included.
Yeah.
But no, it really does. Yeah, I too many to name, but just
Yep.
so many of my favorite.
Narina Palo's my first thought. I think
Yeah,
when I
that's a good
hear
shout. That's a
that's
good
kind of the
shout.
main one I hear is probably Narina Palo.
And then
From
not, there was a
Ginger.
lot of women singer-songwriters in the noughties, 90s and noughties,
Yeah.
Corinne Bailey Rae and people like that,
Yeah.
were doing often on piano as well. There
Mhm.
was a lot of that going on too. And I think, this is a kind of slight echo of that, but it
It might
sounds
be.
really current.
Mhm.
Well, talking of sounds that I love, I've gone big on pop for my choice next. It's Majesty Palm,
Yep.
Borderline. And I spoke to Olivia and Cameron, who are Majesty Palm for the radio show. And when I mentioned the Blue Nile, both
Mhm.
their faces lit up. And then my face
Oh.
would light up as well, because you can hear that on this track, that kind
Mhm.
of, the synthesizer,
Yep.
I would say kind of 80s, 90s synthesizer going on, and it's a kind of slow pace. And I think Olivia's vocals are kind of so chilled, and it matches that really perfectly.
Mhm.
Um, just listening again, as I was before we started recording, there are other kind of 80s and 90s influences like Scritti Politti and Prefab Sprout and all that. But I think it does seem contemporary to me, similar to as we were saying with Anna Cassidy. You can
Yeah.
maybe, I think one of the things about doing the radio show and stuff is you start not picking away, but you say, oh, that's that influence and that's that influence.
Aye.
But
You
actually,
dissect it.
it doesn't really matter. It's
It's the whole
what's
thing.
this here and now, and I think it sounds amazing. I love it as a track.
Yeah, I love all the singles they've released this year. They've had an incredible couple of years, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like they've just really gone from strength to strength. I loved The Longer I Hold You. I think was the other one that was nearly on mine. But this one's also incredible as well. It reminds me a lot of Kadinsky sort of thing, where
Yeah.
it's just it's very electronic but very moody at the same time. It's not like a sort of happy clappy sort of poppy banger. It's much more moody than that. It's definitely got an atmosphere around it, which is becoming kind of their sound. I think is like atmospheric, as well as being catchy and poppy at the same time. The bridge is probably my favorite bit, where it's like
Yeah.
the male and female voices singing sort of together. That's a really nice sort of payoff of the verse chorus verse structure, I think. Do you know they met on Instagram?
I I
Apparently.
don't think I know that.
Yeah,
No. Okay.
apparently. I think they just messaged each other and just sent each other some demos, and that's how we got together, which is crazy to me because it's yeah, it's usually like some kind of the way they write together. It sounds like they've been doing this for years. Basically, it's something they've got a very like years on years built relationship. But yeah, it's just a call up come from a call up on Instagram to get to this. It's incredible, and yeah, they're both
Yeah,
really
because it does
very
feel like they've
talented.
been making music together for absolutely years. But
Yeah.
I think you're also right that they're maybe discovering their sound as they go along. Because
Mm.
if you take their releases as a whole, there's quite a difference there. But I think atmospheric is absolutely right. This has got
Mm-hmm.
buckets of atmosphere, and yeah, I mean, as soon as I heard it, I went, "Oh yeah, this is." I really wanted to talk to them about it, see what the
Yeah.
influences were. And now that you mention it, I do remember there being a kind of interesting story behind how they make music.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they said how they met, but certainly, how they kind of do this stuff together.
Just all online, I guess, just sending stuff back and forth.
Doing it separately, but then bringing it all
Main
together, and
thing.
then it really,
Yeah.
really works.
That's similar to myself and Neil, I think, overall. We just kind of just bounce things back and forth between our houses, and occasionally something works.
So this next one was the other one that I would have had on my list if you hadn't picked it. So what
Oh,
is
really? Oh, great. Okay, it's On My Mind by Gus Harrower, who is a very prolific session musician and songwriter. This one, yeah, again, it's one I had only discovered in the last couple of weeks after being asked it and passed me by. It's a four to the floor catchy pop anthem, and that's exactly what it is. And the chorus, just as soon as you hear it, it just sticks in your head and it will not leave. It will not leave. The production's incredible. His performance, he's got another, again, very unique but powerful voice, I think. And yeah, you can tell it's him when he's singing, if that's not, too reductive. But yeah, it's definitely Gus singing. And there's an incredible use of range in the song as well. I thought just the stretch of it, it was put to its full test. And I appreciate any song that decides to take what could be a very simple, just, mixed register, belt the whole way through, and tries to sort of challenge that by moving the range from somewhere you wouldn't typically hear in a pop song to super low to super high. And yeah, again, just massive drums is always a winner for me.
It is a massive pop song. I absolutely love it as well. And it came out in the summer, I think that's right. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was a classic summer pop song. you can imagine it getting repeated plays on American AR radio,
Mm-hmm.
and the top down and it's got all of those
Very
kind of
Miami.
plays going on. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's interesting you say it's kind of addictive. I've written down here that as
Mm-hmm.
soon as it finishes, you immediately want to play it
You want
again.
to play it again?
Oh, I want to hear that again. It's amazing. Um, he only released a couple of singles this year, I think. Is
Yeah,
that right?
it wasn't too busy. It was only a couple, I think, and yeah, this one in particular stood out for me. I think he's been busy with a lot of shows. I think more than anything else, he's
Right.
been gigging not just with his own band but with other bands as well. Um, but again, I'm not sure. Couldn't find evidence of whether it's leading up to an EP or anything. It seems to be a standalone thing at the moment. But I hope there's an EP because I'd love to hear just more of this. Because as you say, as soon as I heard it, I wanted to play it again and again and again, again and again. It's just one of those very like earworm is very much the apt word to describe it, I think, and you just want to keep going with it again and again and again.
Yeah, absolutely. Being greedy, I would love to hear more as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's the case. Um, okay, my next choice is a Queen of Harps, and Where Will You Find Me? And I'm going to claim that this has been the year of the harp. The
I
harp
think you're
being
right.
here, there, and everywhere in a brilliant way. You've
Yep.
had
Dara
albums
do.
and Daradu,
Mm-hmm.
a Esther Swift,
Mm-hmm.
Newton, and many others. But I think,
Maya McAdam, I think as well. Yeah.
of course, Maya McAdam, who we've had
Mm-hmm.
on the radio show. Yeah, absolutely. So there's been a lot of harp going
Loads
on.
of harp.
I
It's
am
the
here
year of
for
the
it. I
harp.
absolutely love it. I think it's an
Yeah.
amazing instrument.
It's an incredible
Um,
instrument.
but I think few are as experimental as Queen of Harps. Anise Pearson, aka
Mm-hmm.
Anise Pearson, has been. There were 3 singles this year, but I think this was my favourite. And again, for me, there's a kick of nostalgia. It's got that kind of trip hop,
Yeah.
jungle, drum and bass of the 90s
Mm-hmm.
feel going on about it. And so once again, kind of looking back to create something which is absolutely brand new. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's using all these older influences of like drum and bass and hip hop. A little bit more on something like grime is more like the beat, I think, and then taking the harp and slamming that in there as well, because why not? And yeah, it just creates something very unique. And yeah, it's how new genres get born is by shoving two things that don't really work together. And yeah, Queen of Harps seems to be doing that with their knowledge of both hip hop and I guess harps as well. I saw that she composed for like the Scottish Ballet, I think, as well. So composer and a rapper coming together to make something that takes like bites of both of those apples. It's just it's made something very unique, and it's not really a sound you'll hear most like in the most hip hop. Really, harp's not really associated with it,
No.
but yeah, Nice has done a great job of taking what is her, I guess, primary instrument, and then taking the genre that she's most associates with and loves, and just it's created a very personal sound to her, I think, and it's very much that's the background as well. So it's very authentic, I think, which is why it probably works more than you'd expect.
I mean, we've spoken in the past about how increasingly, maybe not increasingly, but certainly the importance of collaboration and crossing genres that's been
Yeah.
happening over the last few years. And I think this is a great example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if you didn't have the name Queen of Harps and you just heard the track,
Like, oh,
it would
it's
pass you
a hip
by.
hop
And
track.
then you might go, no, there is this harp going on in there. I think
Yeah.
it's incredible.
No,
And you met,
I missed this one as well, but no, I was happy that it was on the list because it's something that I would have loved to have found on my own. So
yeah.
I'm glad you put it on.
And you mentioned Daradu, and I
Yeah,
was really close to including one of those because again, there's really interesting experimental stuff on that EP too.
loads. Yeah, I saw Dara live. I think last December. I think we read when she was supporting Pinlight, and it was just the harp, no backing tracks or anything really, but just the harp and a loop pedal, and it's just incredible. Have you seen her live?
No, I haven't.
It's just incredible. There's musicianship and just for me, singing at the same time as playing harp is just a crazy thing because I'm doing it with the fiddle and I can barely keep it together. So the fact that they're able to do it with the harp, it's stunning.
Just as an aside, a last Celtic Connections, I think it was last year, not the year before. Yeah, it was last year. I went to see, oh no, who was I was going to see? Who was the main, anyway, I can't remember, but the support was a Welsh harpist who was
Uh-huh.
playing two at the same time.
No.
Like, like kind of Jimmy Page with the,
Yeah. Two-headed guitar
it
with a
was,
harp.
he was incredible,
That's
absolutely
mad.
incredible.
Mad. But if you get a
Um,
chance to see Dara live, definitely do. Or
oh
Queen of
yeah,
Harps live, definitely do as well. Because I'd love to
yeah.
see how that I'm imagining there's some kind of like laptop or like an Ableton Live thing, and also a harp going on. So I've no idea how that would work live, but I'd be interested to see it.
So your next one, what's that, Fiona?
I need to find it. It is Useless Love by Edinburgh born singer songwriter Archie Top. Is it Top or Tap, actually? Let me double check
Top, I
that.
think.
It is Top? That's fine. This was part of their project to release, I think, 10 singles in 10 months, in the first 10 months as an artist, which just sounds like impossible to me, to be honest, knowing my workflow and speed of getting things out. That's just so much stress, I can't even imagine. But the purpose of it was to just kind of explore as many different genres as possible, and again, as we're saying, smush them together. So this one for me is a nice sort of smushing of kind of like smooth ballad pop with like indie rock at the same time. And there's another one where I first heard it and I just knew instantly it had to be on the list. So it's, I think this year is the year of like hearing something and going, well, that has to be there. There was something about this one that maybe just clicked with it. It reminded me a lot of sort of Lou Reed as
Right.
well, and yeah, just again, yeah, very like raw, authentic sounding voice in it as well, and just the arrangement I really liked as well. And just when the chorus kicks in, it just feels very deserved. It's like good build up to that, and then it comes in and just sort of takes you aback a little bit. But yeah, I loved it for that.
So this again, you were saying Archie released 10, a
Yep.
song, and I missed them all. Which I feel really bad about. Absolutely new to me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting. Again, there's quite a lot of piano in your choices. There's, yeah,
It's not my fault.
no, it's no bad thing. I was going to say if I'm going heavy on the harp,
Yeah,
then you
that's true.
get a
There
lot
you
of
go.
amazing piano through your. I love the piano as an instrument, but this is a really so almost interesting. To see Lou Reed, there's a kind of
Mm-hmm.
crooner, indie crooner feel.
Yeah.
Afghan Wigs was kind of who I was thinking. That kind of,
Mm-hmm.
and it's it starts out almost like a kind of older fashioned
Yeah.
ballad.
Yeah, I
That
think it's
you might
ballady.
find
Yeah.
on a Richard Curtis film soundtrack, which is not I
Melancholic
love a
sort of thing.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
But then it switches and it becomes harder. It kind of takes your legs away and goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, this is not what I was expecting."
No,
As it
it's. I
goes
mean, I
through.
also guess kind of creep by Radiohead that starts kind of like very slow and just then ugliness just hits it in the chorus. The sort of guitar just kicks in and it's just dirty and filthy and yeah, not what
Yeah,
you expected at all.
yeah, no, absolutely. The Scottish band Sons and Daughters as well used
Oh
to
yeah.
do that quite a bit. You had that kind of almost old school voice,
Mhm.
and then what went on around it was quite dirty and scuzzy and all of that. Yeah, it was really really interesting. I'm definitely going to check out more of Archie's
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, there's 9 others.
I know there's plenty to get stuck into, definitely.
Loads. I can't believe they're that prolific. That's not fair. I don't think.
Well, my next choice is Kitty, and I've been a fan of Kitty's since I saw her live at the Tron Theatre. I was emceeing a night there, and oh gosh, straight away blown away by her as an artist and as a singer as well. We said that Brooke Coombe has kind of got an old soul. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's doubly for Kitty, no doubt. I think this is someone who absolutely lives and breathes the music she makes and sings. And probably it's the music she, is immersed in from a young age. I think you don't get
Mm-hmm.
to be like this. And you were saying that, your album, oh yeah, it's on the way and it's taking the time.
Yeah.
Kitty's album has been my most eagerly awaited one for many years. I was like, oh, well, come on, we need an album coming out.
God.
I think possibly she has been waiting to make it this good because if you liked Maybe, which is a great
Aye.
track, I think anyway,
Mm-hmm.
then the album, you're going to absolutely love the album. What did you think of
Excellent.
the track, first of all?
I'm really happy to see Kitty still doing stuff. I think Pretty Girls might have been in my top 10 or your top 10 in 2021,
That sounds about
possibly.
right. Yeah.
Couldn't remember, but that was the first sort of song I'd heard by them, and I thought I heard the song without seeing them, and I was like, oh cool, it's nice that we've got an older artist on the list. Nope. Not
Yeah.
at all. Still early 20s again. Once again, we picked someone in early 20s who just sounds decades wiser than their age is really giving it to it. There's not much praise to give her that's not already been said, I don't think, by countless, rightly so, by countless, jazz heads and every every kind of blogger, every kind of reviewer has just had nothing but praise for her, and yeah, as I say, rightly so, because it's just such a unique sounding voice, and it's just if you see her do it live, as you said, you
Yeah.
saw her live. I watched the live video at Edinburgh Jazz of this song, and just watching this effortlessness as all these like crazy melismas and different like slides and just weird, also weird sounds just come out of her voice, and it's just all just so controlled, and just it just flows through. I think you're right. Immersed is the word. She's just very immersed in what she's performing and what she's singing about. Yeah, you can't really ignore Kitty. You can't sleep on her either, because yeah,
No.
this album I'm really excited. I didn't know it was out, so I'm excited to check out the rest of it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
I've
out
written
on
here,
Rebecca
Aretha
Basment's.
Franklin walked so Kitty could fly. I don't know why I wrote that.
Well, I get that, she's almost channeling these older kind
Yeah,
of jazz and soul singers. I feel that's how it is. But the album's
channeling is the word.
full of
Yeah.
some of the best jazz musicians as well.
Wow.
I mean, there's some amazing players on it. And so, again, I think, yeah, I've got the people around me. I've got
Yeah.
the songs. As I
It's
say,
all in place.
it's all in place. Let's
Legends
do this.
assemble.
Let's do this now.
I was gonna say the musicality of the performance on maybe or by like the brass and everything. It's just completely just top dog, blew me out of the water. Just how good the whole outfit sounded, and how much that must have taken in terms of rehearsal and just getting it all exactly right. The arrangement's super complex as well. Just yeah, I'd love jazz. I know nothing about it, but I enjoy it, so I can appreciate it from the outside and be like, that is incredibly hard to imagine accomplishing musically.
But I think, even for a jazz album, this is quite accessible because,
Yeah,
there's really strong songs there as well. You know, Singing in the scat style is not for everyone,
yeah.
but these songs kind of, I think they overcome all
I was
obstacles.
strongly reminded of like early Amy Winehouse stuff, or maybe not the first album, the second album where the brass started coming in, like Tears Dry on their own sort of thing. It was what I was sort of thinking of, where it's kind of Motown, but it's also jazz, so it's more kind of accessible and more kind of earwormy than like the scat sort of stuff.
So now that this album's here, it's the race car album.
Oh
I'm never
yeah,
happy. I'm looking for that to come along
it's
next year.
coming, it's coming. I think it's March
It
this
is,
year.
it is,
I said
yeah,
it at the top, didn't I? That's coming.
it is. So your next choice.
Yep. My next choice is Funk for Introverts by Megan Black, who is probably one of the most buzzed about or has the most kind of hype singer-songwriters in Scotland right now, and I think that's also absolutely fair. I think, yeah, she deserves all the praise she's getting. This song in particular is a bit different from Megan, I think, because it's not so much, she's not really known for spoken words so much, but I really enjoyed the kind of lackadaisical sort of performances of like sort of like the sigh and like oh, and the attitude of it was really fun I think to hear. And as if it's a song about like being exhausted by you know performing yourself almost, or performing like a version of you for other people, definitely resonate with me a lot. Just as a fellow introvert, I was like, oh gosh, that's true. Anytime you go to a party, you leave absolutely exhausted, even though you've had a great time. You just feel like that was a lot. So it's that kind of feeling as well. I spent a week with her at a songwriting camp
Right.
in 2022, I think. Song Seeds songwriting, which I'm actually going back to next year as well. And every evening they sort of do a song share thing. And I remember always being very excited to hear what Megan had come up with that day, because it was always just something stunning. I think when we were there, it was a lot about the mother sister sort of era, so kind of like more goddessy and like earthy and naturey. Whereas this one just feels very much like more attitude, more anxiety. Yeah, it's an interesting mix of just different like spoken word, pop, and rock, and everything. And I just think it's a lot of great attitude in this song. What do you think of it?
Well, I think this is the essence of Megan, almost
Mm-hmm.
distilled into one track. I really do. I spoke to her a couple of years ago, might be a while ago now,
Yeah.
not long after the music was starting to come out. As you say, the kind of introverted side was, oh, I'm not, people are paying attention to me now, and I'm not sure how
Yeah.
I feel about this. Whereas this says to me, I'm doing this on my own terms, and sod the rest of you. You either
Yeah.
love it or
Sod
you
it.
don't, and I don't care. Um, I think it was our only release this year, which is interesting.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Because it feels to me like a bit like we're talking about Josephine Sillars, that this might
Mm-hmm.
be, yeah, this is making a mark for me, and then I'm going to do something either different or at least, again, on my own terms.
Yeah, a new era as well.
I
Yeah,
think it's quite an emotional record for that reason, someone really ploughing their own furrow and making what they do their own without anyone else, taking
like
into account what
compromising or
anyone else.
anything.
No
Yeah,
compromise. I think that's right,
yeah.
which is
It's
great.
very DIY, but it's still like it sounds it belongs alongside any of the big like budget tracks as well. I think it's absolutely it wouldn't sound out of place on any kind of like compilation album like the best of Scottish music. It would be there, even though yeah, it's quite DIY.
Yeah, I think Megan's songs have always been amazing and the way she presents them and all of that thing. But I get
Mm-hmm.
the feeling almost with this record, yeah, I'm beginning to realize just how good I am here, and I'm going to go
Yeah,
and do it. That's what I get from, and I hope that's the
nice.
case because more power to Megan Black. I think she's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So my next track is Autumn 1904, and I heard Catherine sing. Now, I often champion at least one band from my past when we do the Butcher Boy in the past and everything. And this year it's Autumn 1904. This was released this year, but the band themselves were back in it's almost the kind of sound of young Scotland, but in the mid to late 80s rather than the early
Mm-hmm.
postcard years. You've got that kind of male female vocals going on, an almost pleading vocal
Mm.
happening. I was thinking Deacon Blue, and there was a bands called Fruits of Passion and many others. You've also got things like a slap funk bass. You don't get
Mm-hmm.
slap funk bass much anymore.
Which is a crying shame, to be
I think
honest.
it really is a crying shame. Also, you talked about big drums early on. The drum
Mm-hmm.
sound on this is absolutely massive.
Yeah.
It's really turned up to 11, and I'm guessing that was partly because bands were starting to discover electric drums and
Mm-hmm.
what synthesizers could do and all of those things.
Yeah.
Um, the album's great. It's from an album originally
Tales
recorded.
of Innocence, I think.
Yeah, that's right. But this is my standout song because it just reminds me of. I was thinking if I
Nostalgia.
had heard this in the mid 80s, I would have been punching the air like your man at the end of Breakfast Club, Judd Nelson at
Oh
the end of
yeah.
Breakfast Club, that kind of
Alex
thing.
Braywood went on to host his own radio show.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. But I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's another track that's stuck with me throughout the year.
Mm.
I think it was released quite early on in the year, but yeah, I play it over and over. I just think it's
Yeah. No, I can see why. Because you sent your list through and I heard it, and I thought that Spotify had like finished your playlist early and just moved me on to like the 80s or something. Because
it
I thought
is.
it just sounded exactly like a track. It reminded me of Duran Duran. I was thinking of The Cure as well. It felt very like that, and I thought, oh well, something's gone wrong here. But no, you're absolutely right.
Well, there was
It
a
was
good
released
reason for
this
that because
year.
that's when they were making music, and
Yeah.
they did a John Peel session, and they were kind of well considered. There was, as there is now, as we know, lots of bands at that time kind of jockeying to be heard and jockeying to
Yeah.
be out there, and a lot of them now are still making music, which is really
I know.
interesting.
It's their
Often,
40th anniversary. I think that's why they released these songs. It was written in the 80s, but I think it was only just being released now as a 40th anniversary sort of thing.
yeah.
But yeah, I was floored just by how dated's the wrong words. Of its time, I think is the
Yeah,
thing.
well,
Of
I
its
think some
time.
people will think it's incredibly dated, and I think some
Mm.
people who were around at the time might think, "Oh God, that sounded." But
It's not a bad thing though, because like as you say,
no,
it's a nostalgic thing. It reminds you of a certain time,
certainly
and
a
for
nostalgic
me,
kick for me, and I
it's
think that
retro for me.
I think they're really good songs as well. I
Yeah.
think they can do that, and some bands are embracing that sound right now, and we spoke about
A
Majesty
lot of them
Punk.
are imitating it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Majesty Pam, yeah, influenced a lot by like by 80s stuff like Blue. Well, I don't know what Blue Nile was exactly. I can't remember exactly what they were
yes,
about. But yeah,
absolutely.
definitely
They
a lot
took
of
so
bands take a
long.
big influence from there.
The Blue Nile took so long releasing records that they were in over about three
Oh, I
different.
see.
But yeah, you're right.
Another, yeah,
Yeah,
rival for my own heart there. Yeah, I think yeah, even though it's very rooted in the decade where it was written, the production is obviously much more modern. It's kind of kept kicking and screaming into the modern era.
yeah,
It fits alongside everything else on this list. It's just the roots are very clearly there, and it's absolutely authentic to the time where it was written and recorded, or maybe recorded again. I'm not really sure when the album was actually recorded, but there's no bad thing about taking the 80s kicking and screaming into 2024, because again, all the kids love that stuff and all the adults also used to love that stuff, so it's got a very wide audience, I think. But
No,
again, very interesting song.
absolutely. I'm so
I
glad you
love the
liked it.
vocal as well.
I was so glad you liked it because that was one of the ones I thought, oh, I'm not sure. It might just be a bit
No,
great.
it was great.
So, what's your next choice? Crikey.
My next choice is Killjoy by Lou McLean, who is a singer songwriter that sprang from the Girls Rock School Edinburgh
Yeah.
collective. This is a song I've again kind of picked for selfish reasons. I was at the same songwriting camp as I was with Megan. I was a good songwriting camp. It was quite a talented lot I was with. I witnessed the sort of birth of this song one of the days. Again in the evening, came in and Lou started playing this song. I think about halfway through the first chorus, everyone was singing along and like clapping, and it was just immediately. It was kind of a magical moment to realize someone's written an actual like banger here, a very catchy chorus and a very like infectious riff as well. Um, and the EP itself, which is also called Killjoy, it's very much worth a listen. It's Blue's always been kind of very kind of like unapologetically feminist and sort of punky with their attitude, but this one it's a very kind of slightly more. It's very brutal still, but it's also a bit more tongue in cheek. It's a look at like modern feminism and just Killjoy in particular is loosely based on the work Feminist Killjoy by a writer called Sarah Ahmed,
Mhm.
which is a kind of a very a sort of a challenging book that sort of asks people, well, do you still laugh at offensive jokes? Do you point out any sexist or racist comments you hear? Why aren't you doing that? We should be doing that. We should be ruining people's fun to build a better world, and that's kind of where Killjoy comes from, I think, in essence, is that sense of like, well, I'm fighting the good fight. I don't care if I'm ruining anybody's time. I'm
Yeah.
still gonna do it. So that's the idea of it. And I thought it was a genius idea for a song. And just the chorus is so catchy. So
It really is. Lou's another musician I've long admired and followed, and someone who I've seen live many times over the years.
I think we saw her support Mima Merrill last year.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. This is a cracking single, and perhaps musically different to what's gone before. It almost. I'm not going to use the term protest singer, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Lou was kind of on there with her songs and her guitar, and
Mm-hmm.
and her.
Here I am. This is my message.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take it or
Yeah.
leave it.
But so this is really interesting that it's changed, but it never overshadows Lou herself.
Mm-hmm.
That personality still absolutely shines through in this song.
Yeah.
I noticed it was longlisted for the Snack magazine single of the year.
Oh, nice.
A few of our choices were actually, but
Right.
and I really hope that such things and this podcast will introduce more people to Lou McLean because she
I hope
deserves
so too.
to
I
be
think I might be
better
wrong.
known.
I think the prompt that, because we got different prompts for each days in the songwriting camp, the prompt for that day was by Joe Diarc of the Twistettes. They came along to do a session with
Right?
us, and it was basically about writing a punk song. Was the whole idea. So that's where it came from, and I think that you can tell that's an influence behind it. I think
That does sound like a really good songwriting.
it was good. I'm back going again
Group.
this year. It's called Song
Fan-
Seeds, run by
Fantastic.
Becky Wallace. Yeah, you probably know from Scottish hip hop.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know Becky quite well, so that's
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine that she's gathering the troops for
Yeah.
this one, right? So my next track is Evie Waddell or Waddle, I'm not sure, and Chian Yell. And Evie's EP, I think it might actually have been categorized as a single, but there's three amazing
Mm-hmm.
tracks on it called Cluch, and it was one of my favorite releases of the year. Really unexpected and interesting in that it takes folk music and does something so different with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think folk music actually, we've spoken again in the past about how jazz music is doing different things and changing and collaborating. And I think folk music is doing the same thing. There's lots of not odd takes on it, but just different takes on it.
Unique, yeah.
But with traditional music kind of still at
At
its
the
heart.
heart of it. Mm-hmm.
And I think Evie Waddell is right at the kind of forefront of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it shows you that you really don't need to know the language to love the song and the music.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know Gaelic at all, but I
No.
just think it's a wonderful track. And
I'm
I would
embarrassed enough to
recommend,
say when I heard it, I didn't know it was Gaelic. That's how little Gaelic I know. I didn't think it was Gaelic.
Well, now that you're saying that to me, there could be Scots in there as well. There
No,
could be,
it is. I think it could be Old Scots and Gaelic, but yeah, and that's how bad my Gaelic is. But yeah, no, I when this came on, and again, I thought, oh, it's the Spotify thing's taking me somewhere else, but no, it's still in the list. And yeah, I was just struck by again the very unique voice that Evie has, and yeah, the sort of again just confidence behind delivering these lyrics, and I think. It's a visual EP, I think, is the idea behind the three songs. So it's supposed to be a marriage between Scottish Gaelic and like also dance and movement and BSL as well. And the whole point of it is kind of to take this language not everyone really understands, but still, as you say, communicate it well and people can still enjoy it, people can still move to it and dance to it, and that's the whole kind of idea, is it being as accessible as possible for everybody. But even hearing this the first time and not knowing what the words are, as you say, I was still in love with it. I love the fiddle in it. I think it's
amazing.
just a beautiful tone that Evie's got on the fiddle there. And then I watched the video and I saw just the sort of playfulness of it all, and how it's like, you know, it's this fun, just energetic, vibey song, but even though it's in Gaelic in a language I don't understand, and it's very traditional as well at the same time. So the root is still there, but Evie's doing just such a kind of cheeky and fun way about it that it's extremely accessible, even if you don't know much about Gaelic or Scots or BSL or any of this stuff. It's still an incredibly enjoyable listen.
I saw Evie play live at the Solus Festival this year that I was at, and yeah, I mean the crowd were just going great for it. You know, it was just the perfect kind of mid-afternoon set. It was
Nice.
yeah, really really nice. And yeah, if you enjoyed that track, then Fluch is to check out the other tracks on it because they're very different. And again, not what you would expect from what might be categorized as a trad
Like a
folk
Gaelic trad
album.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
it seems a
yeah.
bit more in my head. I'm thinking about like doing higher music in school and sticking on like bothy ballads, and everyone's been like, "Oh God, not this again." So it's not that. It's very much more fun version of that. I think I looked up Cluic means play in Gaelic, so it's like play and like have fun, and yeah, and also play the music.
And that makes that's that which
Makes
makes it
sense.
the perfect title, absolutely.
Hmm.
So believe it or not, we're both down to our final choices.
Oh my goodness.
So yourself.
Another one I only really caught on to in the last couple of weeks because I'd missed a lot of stuff, and I went through everyone's sort of like top tens and everyone's like lists of everything, and I found Pigs by Brenda. And again, it came on. I think I was doing a long drive to Blair Gowrie for a wedding on no a gig on Monday at like 7 in the morning, so it's pitch black. Stuck on this, and this came on, and the riff just woke me right up. It just woke me up instantly, and maybe just sit up and pay attention. This is a pop punk band. Their bio on Spotify is the best I've ever seen. Brenda is every woman you've ever seen, met, smelled, heard, or feared. Just like that kind of tells you exactly what they're about. Another unapologetic pop punk sort of outfit. It doesn't really care what you think.
No, absolutely not.
And Pig, I love for just being again very tongue in cheek, very playful, but also there's clearly a lot of rage going on behind that between many different men, I presume, but I don't want to presume, treating people or women just poorly and just having the balls to shout "you're a pig" at
Yeah.
them. So I liked it for that reason, and yeah, it just woke me right up.
I've
Again, I'll
got the
listen to it
album
again
when it
now.
came out. I absolutely
Oh
love it.
right,
I think
okay,
it's
wow.
amazing. A band who kind of know what they are and what they're doing, and they
Mm-hmm.
look as if they're having a ball doing it. You know,
Yeah,
it's like sometimes you see bands and you think, I don't know if you're having that much fun. I
yeah,
think it'd be great fun to be in Brenda. I think it would be absolutely hilarious.
it
And you
would
know,
be.
recently I saw Carla Easton and Blair Young's documentary Since Yesterday,
Oh
which is all
yeah.
about the kind of untold story of the girl bands of Scotland. It's an
Mm-hmm.
amazing film. I think you would really love
I need
it.
to check it out. Yeah, I've not managed to catch any of the viewings yet, but I do want to see it.
But for me, Brenda feels in that tradition, and particularly the kind of DIY scene that was around the 13th Note in Glasgow in the 90s and the noughties, you know, that kind of, as you say, punk attitude that was there. Yeah, I think it's a great track. It's a great album. And again, I would love to see Brenda live. I bet
Yeah,
that's
me too.
rocking.
I can see it being really sweaty. I feel like it's a sweaty time with a lot of leather going on. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It's super short, but sometimes short and simple is the best recipe because it's just, again, one listen, you know exactly what it's about. You want to go through it again and again. So yeah, I need to check out the rest of the album as well at some point. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the one song I've heard by Brenda, but I want to hear more.
So my final song is Tamzine and Holding On to You. And I put this at the end because you didn't want me blubbing through the rest of the 19 songs. I just love this song. I love Tamzine in general. I think we may have featured her maybe on a previous roundup. I can't quite
Possibly.
remember. But
I tried to check, make sure there's no
yeah,
doubles, but I can't remember.
well, yeah, a long time fan of Tamzine's. The album that this is from is fantastic. It's called Any Weather, In Any Weather, I think is right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw her. She was up in Glasgow in the Glad Cafe on a Monday night.
Mm-hmm.
And because she's mainly down in London these days.
All right.
And she runs these nights in London, and I can't remember what they're called, but she was doing one up here. So I thought, well, I've got to go along and
Yeah.
see this. And it was a great night. And then Tamzine played this just again on piano, and you could hear a pin drop. It was absolutely magical to
Wow.
hear. Yeah, and I'm going to say there wasn't a dry eye in the house, but it was maybe. But
It's just you.
I just think that one, she's got a gorgeous voice, but then she
Mhm.
also writes these kind of heart. This is a heartbreaking song to me. And
Yeah.
speaking to her afterwards, she kind of said, "I wrote this. I'm maybe self-aggrandizing myself. She maybe said this on stage and not to me
Not
directly.
directly to you.
I'm just imagining this now. But she did say, I'm sure, that this song's been about for a while, but she's only recently been able to kind of perform it and sing it and put it
Oh,
on
right.
the
Wow.
album. So it really
Yeah.
kind of obviously is very, very heartfelt. And
It's
I
very
think that
personal.
comes through.
I think so as well. Yeah. Well, another one. Thanks for putting us on the list and making me cry as well. I didn't want that. It's supposed to be a fun thing that we're doing every
Yeah.
year, not a sad thing.
I know,
But
I
no, I
know.
was again just it struck a chord somewhere deep in my soul, like that voice. Yeah, I think I have heard a couple of ones before, but yeah, this one in particular. It did stand out in the 10 that you've picked. This one stood out to me. Just in terms of simplicity and sometimes just the raw honesty of lyrics and just a really really gorgeous and vulnerable voice can just carry you through and without all the sort of razzmatazz. I think the rest of the album there's a few that are a bit bigger and a bit
But
more full of instrumentation, but
yeah,
this
yeah,
one it's kind of in the middle and it just allows Tamzine's voice to just, as we said in other tracks as well, to just be the forefront of it and to just actually, take the show because the message is so just relatable and heartbreaking as well. You don't really want too much else going on at the
yeah,
same time. I think it really accentuates the personal the vulnerability of it and just the pain. You can feel the pain that Tamzine's going through while she's singing it, which isn't always the case with like breakup songs or anything like
yeah,
that. You can feel it's sort of like it's been completely moved from her body to the record.
yeah,
And it's a
absolutely.
tough listen, but it's a very very powerful piece. I think not one
And
to listen to when you're in the car again because you'll cry and you'll crash.
absolutely, absolutely. I think lyrically, it's perhaps the simplest
Mm-hmm.
of all the songs that we've played, but that makes it for me all the more powerful because you cannot dodge. There's no similes and metaphors or anything like that going
Ah,
on. This
this is
is
how I
straight
feel.
to the point. This is how I feel. This is how I felt, and I'm getting this out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an
Even
amazing
though that
gig.
it doesn't feel very cliched or like it's very, as you say, it's very simple, but there's not any like just overused of any, or if there is anything that seems particularly simple, it's just that it's simple. It's not like
Yeah,
like pop like let's something like Westlife or someone just shoving any kind of like random simile to mean that I love someone. It
yeah,
doesn't feel like that at all. It just feels that kind of like a diary again, I guess a little bit, or just feels like a general just stream of consciousness about the actual journey of going through something like that and going through the heartbreak of that.
and that was one of my favorite gigs of the year. One, you don't
Yeah.
expect something like that on a Monday night,
No.
and two, just partly because of that, to kind of hear that on stage. Sometimes you just get that moment where everyone is kind of together watching
Mm.
this thing going on.
It's magical, yeah. No, it was a really, really great pick. All the picks have been great, but yeah, this one stood out at the end for me.
Oh, that's great, and it has been good once again. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much. I think considering what a kind of difficult job this is every year, we've done pretty well, and it's been a good, a good cross section of the music of the year as well.
Yeah, I don't even envy you. You've got to pick songs every week for your show and then take all of that and put it into this year. So you've got a way worse job than me. So
Well,
I'm gonna on behalf of everyone, thank you for all you do in terms of promoting indie
oh,
musicians in Scotland. We really
it's an
appreciate
absolute
this.
pleasure, as you know. I love doing it, and
Yeah.
thank you for doing this podcast, because this is one of the highlights of my year to do this.
Yeah, I think so. We both learn about new artists and return and just get to chat about the amazing things happening in the Scottish music scene, and it's always a delight to just be a part of that in a small way.
Well, thank you, Fiona. Hopefully, I might see you at a gig at Celtic Connections,
You
perhaps
will,
with
you
Lakers. That
will
would be
indeed.
great. But in the meantime, thanks again, and we will be back soon with our best of film for 2024. See you then.